So I think the biggest change or the biggest transformation that's happened because of the millennials, and even more so because of Gen Z, is the way the power has shifted completely from the hands of the marketeers, like it used to be, let's say, many years before, and to where it is today. So I think a lot of marketeers are still grappling with the fact that they no longer control the narrative at all, and it's in their interests to just participate in the narrative, be part of the conversations. I think that's the biggest shift that's happened. Millennials and Gen Z as well are demanding, they're quite unforgiving, and they sort of keep you guessing all the time as to whether you got it right or not. And I think that again is a fairly big challenge for marketeers, because you never know whether it's worked or not, because there's a continuous feedback loop that you keep getting from that audience, and you need to keep adjusting. Pace is another byproduct of the way that these guys work, right? So I think just given where we are today, just the sheer pace at which marketeers need to keep turning things around, need to constantly have their ear to the ground and react or be proactive, I think is a huge change as well. And as someone who's started off her career marketing to the pre-millennial era, and now having seen the next couple of generations, the differences are very stark, and it's very interesting as well. So as I said, these guys are very demanding and they're quite unforgiving. I think interestingly enough, they also hold brands to a very high standard. So it's also causing a lot of brands to rethink their own brand values, and what about those values are we communicating to these people beyond just the product or the proposition. I think the rest of it, of course, is almost hygiene, but superlative customer experience is a given. If you don't get there, you pretty much have lost this audience. The quality of service, the consistency in messaging, I think all of these become part of the package. But above all, as I said, the core is ultimately the brand values and what a brand stands for, and whether or not that generation identifies with it. I think that's where it all starts. Obviously, it's the internet, the mobile, etc. But I think in the last 4 to 5 years, Geo has just suddenly opened up the floodgates, right? So the amount of data consumption that's happened, or the kind of statistics that one sees today about mobile internet data and the kind of content consumption that's happening, it's mind blowing. I think a lot of it is because of Geo as well. So again, it all goes back to this audience, right? What used to work well for marketeers earlier, which was a push strategy, no longer works. So when you're talking about predominantly pull, right, I think customer services are at the heart of that. The kind of word of mouth that goes around, the kind of experiences that they have got from your brands, whether they're willing to talk about it, whether they're willing to become advocates for your brand. I think all of that becomes super critical to achieving success with this audience. One is to constantly have your ear to the ground, right? Because it's also a rapidly changing generation. What may have been true of the same generation a year ago probably is being challenged today. So that's the nature of the beast. So as marketers, I think it's super critical, and it might sound very basic, but it's amazing how many companies grapple with it even today. Have your ear to the ground constantly, because things are changing by the day, by the minute. Break down any silos that exist within companies to share this kind of data that you're getting. Think on constantly reevaluate your own offerings to the audience in light of the data that you're picking up from the ground, and sort of keep doing this all over again. So it's almost about going back to the drawing board every single day based on what you're hearing, and repurposing what you have to offer for this audience. I think it's something that everyone's grappling with. One, as I said, is always keep the customer at the heart of everything that you do. And if they, make sure that they find a very strong connect with what you stand for, right? So again and again, it comes back to the brand values. What is the brand? What is the brand ethos? What does the brand stand for? Are they relating to that? Do they appreciate that? So I think the foundation of success for strong brands today would be in that realm, and everything else then you add on to that to sort of to build the edifice. At the end of the day, it's all about great storytelling, right? So how strong is your plot, which comes back to stuff like the brand values and things like that. How consistently and how interestingly are you delivering on that plot? And third is the kind of media. I mean, how are you reaching out to them? How are you putting the story out there? I think that's becoming super critical as well. So I think it's a combination of these three. To be very honest, our target audience is the millennial urban customer, maybe you could say even the non-metro, but it's ultimately a youngish customer who's very comfortable with looking for personal finance related products on the internet. And as that goes, as a definition, we don't see too much of a difference, particularly between the south or the north. But as far as the question goes, I think one important thing that we have started doing already and will do a lot more in the coming year is creating a lot of vernacular content for the south markets as well. See, content has a different role to play in different industries, and so does vernacular. But when you look at fintech, right, I think the bigger play is in the information gathering stage when people are doing their research, because that's where a ton of the audience is at today. There's a ton of questions that they have. There's a lot of uncertainty in their minds, a lot of questions. And BankBazaar has always been content has been at the heart of everything that we do at marketing. So I think, as I said, a lot of vernacular content for the southern languages, a lot of video content for the southern languages that help the audiences in these markets arrive at the right decision for them based on the correct information being made available to them. Completed 10 years in July. We did the very first edition of the BankBazaar Aspiration Index, and that's a study that is available. What we saw is behaviorally there might not be too many differences, but definitely when it comes to certain things like aspirations, right, ambitions, somewhere some of the southern markets are ahead. So Chennai was right on top of the pool when it came to the aspiration index. But at the same time, when it came to the smaller towns, you saw that Lucknow was leading the pack with the non-metros, right? So, so to that extent, I might say that the opportunities seem to be slightly higher. The levels of education seem to be slightly higher in the south, and so they may lead slightly when it comes to their aspirations as well as their belief in their ability to attain those aspirations. But otherwise, as I said, when it comes to internet behavior, I think we are seeing the same kind of traits across the millennial urban audience, be it a North Indian or a South Indian. I would say conversations. Second is intelligence, so that's data and everything. And the third, I think, has to be vernacular. So invest very heavily on vernacular content because that's where the next wave is, and also really get heavily into video, because as you get ready for the Gen Z, I think that's pretty much where the entire focus is going to be. One that's interesting, one that's consistent, and one that has superlative experiences. There are quite a few of them that make the list. The Amazon Alexa Leila Mein Leila was supremely entertaining, and I never found myself getting bored of that ad. I think it was great entertainment. Did it make me go out and buy an Alexa? Not really. But one brand whose advertising I constantly I appreciate and admire is Titan, and their campaign, which was Flaunt Your Flaws, I found very, very interesting. It sort of resonated with me. It struck a chord with me, and that's a campaign that I'm not an influencer in the sense I'm not forwarding campaigns to my circle, but that was definitely a campaign that a lot of us shared with each other because it just sort of struck a chord somewhere.